I live in a city 6 hours away from my hometown, so I can only really afford to drive back for the holidays. Sadly, my mom passed away earlier this year, and I hadn't been able to visit her grave since the funeral. I felt awful about not being able to make the drive sooner, so I really wanted the cemetery to be my first stop when I got to town. Well, I've never been the most punctual person, and it ended up being past midnight when I finally arrived. I wasn't frightened of being in a cemetery so late, but I was ready for some sleep and trying to move fast. The only problem is that it's a really big cemetery, so I got a little turned around trying to find her. After at least 5 or 10 solid minutes of aimless wandering, I realized I had to pee really bad. I hadn't used the bathroom since leaving the house 6 hours in a giant Route 44 power rate ago. It was so late, and I was so far away from the road that I really didn't see anything wrong with stepping away from the graves and relieving myself on a tree. Sue me, I was dying. Afterwards, I decided to make the loop one more time before calling it quits, but right before the turnaround point, I suddenly heard a set of footsteps behind me. I spun around, shocked that anyone else would be there, but I saw no one. That freaked me out. I was positive that I had heard someone on the narrow concrete path just behind me. I called out a few tentative hellos, but there was no response either. Creeped out, I quickened my pace and focused more on getting back than looking for Mom. Ahead, a stretch of the pathway was lined with shady trees on either side, forming a dark tunnel. Inside, there was a tall, dark shadow figure, barely distinguishable from the darkness around it. The sight of it made my blood run cold. It's like it was radiating malice. I've never felt such a sudden and intense shift in the very atmosphere. When I called out another hello, it turned and began charging towards me. I was so startled that I fell over backwards and sat there frozen until the shadow man vanished a few feet away from me. And just like that, it was gone, and the only thing left was a blast of cold air. When I calmed down enough to rise, I walked around the tunnel of trees, too frightened to walk beneath them, and I hurried back to my car. But I think it followed me to my dad's house. We'd never experienced anything remotely paranormal there, yet that night something woke us up, banging on the front door just after 3 a.m. I had been in bed for less than an hour when it happened. Dad came to the entryway a few seconds after myself, and we stared at the Ring doorbell camera as nothing pounded on the door like we owed it money. Worried that it would wake the neighbors, Dad ripped it open mid-knock, and everything fell instantly silent. There was nothing and no one outside. Not knowing what else to do, we returned to bed and slept the rest of the night, but things only got worse over the following days. We've seen stuff fall off of shelves without being touched. Weird cold spots will randomly form and disappear all around the house. And last night, Dad saw a tall shadow figure standing at the foot of his bed. Now it's worth noting, I didn't tell him anything about my experience at the cemetery. He's always been a very logical man. I didn't want him to worry about me losing my mind. Yet he saw the exact thing that I saw, and even felt the same thing that I felt. He said that it gave off such an intensely evil aura that he had never even considered the possibility of an intruder. Whether it was a demon, Satan himself, or something else entirely, he had no clue, only that it wished him harm. He was frozen with fear, and despite having the heat cranked up to a ridiculous 74, it was cold enough to see his breath. Eventually, it disappeared into thin air, and he fell back asleep. He described it to me as a nightmare, but he was so shaken up that I can tell he doesn't believe it was a dream. If I hadn't experienced what I did, or even if I had just told him what had happened, I could probably convince myself that's all it was. But come on, I don't know what to do about any of this. I just know that I can't bring a demon or whatever this is back into his house and then go back to school after New Year's. I can't. God knows he's been through enough. Well, we both have. So I guess my real question is, am I right about this thing being a demon? And if I am, what the hell do I do now? I tried Googling it, but that was pointless. I don't even know where to begin. I didn't realize how complicated all of this stuff could get, and I just want to be done with it. I'm going to tell Dad everything as soon as he gets home from work. Then maybe we can figure it out together. After what he saw last night, I don't think I'll have any trouble convincing him. Okay, well, wish me luck, I suppose. Apologies if this story feels scattered. Something new just happened, so I'm trying to get it all down before it leaves my brain, though I'm not sure that's ever going to happen. I guess I'm looking for advice. So first off, before tonight, 3 weeks ago exactly, my girlfriend Kayla and I experienced something strange while walking from my car to my house. Just as we approached the doorway, we both heard what sounded like laughter. We stood there silently for a moment, listening carefully. I think we both felt that the laugh wasn't one that we recognized. Even more so, it felt manufactured. A combination of a high-pitched voice and an unnaturally low voice, in unison. We didn't hear it again after standing there, so we thought nothing of it, decided to go inside. When we walked into the living room, I was expecting to see a movie being played on the TV, but instead, the TV was off and I see my best friend, his girlfriend, and one of her friends are all sitting around the coffee table in front of the couches. Probably playing Monopoly again. These two loved games, so I felt it was a safe assumption. When we walked in, the three of them practically jumped from sitting to a standing position, followed by exhales of relief when they set eyes upon the two of us. Who else did they think was going to be coming in anyway? I shrugged it off and we walked over to see what they were really up to. They'd reclaimed their seated positions, and as I got closer, I realized they were using a Ouija board. What the hell? I asked, almost laughing. My best friend responds while rolling his eyes. Julia's idea. His girlfriend's friend. I sort of laugh and tell him to have fun, and I start to walk to my room. But instead of following me, Kayla says that she wants to do it too. Do what? I asked. The board. Before I could say anything, Julia pipes up. Sorry, but we already started the session. It's bad luck to bring in newcomers mid-session. I laughed. I was sorry, but I couldn't help it. Was she serious? How could anything possibly be bad luck when it came to a board game? Laugh all you want, but we can't just introduce someone new. Sorry. I guess part of me felt like they were making Kayla feel bad. I didn't know why, but it just seemed silly to me. But then Kayla said something that surprised me. Oh no, I totally understand. I don't want to mess with something you guys already have going on. Next time, though. Everyone agreed, and then I was following Kayla to my room. We messed around, played video games for hours before finally deciding to go to sleep. Kayla fell asleep instantly. I, on the other hand, I couldn't shake this very uncomfortable feeling I had. Laying there, I tried to figure out why I was feeling this way. Without even really thinking, I was just looking around my room. The feeling, it was as if someone were watching me use the bathroom or something really personal. I was laying in bed and not half as vulnerable, but that's just how it felt. I felt like I was tossing and turning all night. In the morning, Kayla said that she woke up a few times. Each time, I was asleep. She sounded concerned, though, not just making an observation. So I asked her, did something happen? Hesitantly, she tells me that, yeah, one of those times something did happen. There's a street light close to my house, specifically on my side of the house, and you can often get a glow of light in the room from it. The window itself appears lit up because of this. She was unable to fall back asleep and considered using the bathroom. Before getting out of bed, she had an intense feeling that she should look at the window. When she did, she saw a handprint form on the glass. Kayla told me it was as though someone had made condensation and then placed their hand there. She was only able to look at it for a couple of moments before it disappeared, just as a real handprint might do, under the same conditions. I was disturbed, honestly. My first thought wasn't even about the board, because, for the record, I'd never even bothered to consider what a Ouija board was, besides the basis of some scary movies. I thought someone was outside my window. I didn't want Kayla to think I didn't believe her, but I had to know, so I asked some clarifying questions. You saw a hand form, but no hand? Like, was there a person standing out there, or? She said that there was nobody there. The handprint appeared on its own accord, not attached to an entity or a person. I know Kayla well enough to know there's no reason for her to make this up. She didn't seem to be having fun anyways. She was actually expecting me to explain it to her, but how could I? I told her that I had no idea what the hell it could have been. Any chance it was a dream? Yeah, that question didn't go over well. I believed her, though. She described feeling like she was being watched after that. She said she almost woke me up. So what was it? A real person, a ghost, a demon, a dream? Honestly, it didn't matter at this point. Something did feel seriously wrong about the whole experience. I took her home later that morning, and on the way out we see that the group had passed out in the living room, with the TV on and the board still open on the table. Huh, wow, Kayla said in almost disbelief at the sight. They didn't even put the board away? I sure as hell hope they said goodbye. On the ride to Kayla's house, she explained to me everything that she knew about Ouija boards. She said she trusted the group because they had started quoting rules when she asked to join. She assumed they knew what they were doing, but now she wasn't so sure. According to Kayla, spirit boards, as she calls them, are tricky. They have rules and they come with risks. She told me that she actually used one twice before, never had a negative experience. She'd followed the rules. I dropped Kayla off and she told me I needed to ask my roommates if they said goodbye, and to also ask if they had any weird experiences since using the board. I was still sitting between skeptic and believer in this situation. I believed Kayla, but I'm just skeptical in general. I decided to look everything up that she told me, and I found it online. There's so much more information out there than I could have even imagined, like real stories of people using these boards and having seriously shitty luck, or genuinely terrifying experiences. One woman recounted that she'd been physically removed from her bed in the middle of the night after using one, and she had scratches on her leg and claimed that a demon had given them to her while yanking her out of bed. Sure, these could be fabrications, but the amount of information gave me major pause. Basically, I found several different sources that echoed what Kayla had said to me about the necessity of saying goodbye. What I didn't find were a ton of positive experiences. Even the ones that started that way seemed to end in horror. People believing they were talking to loved ones, only to realize that it was something else. So I asked my roommates, "Did you all say goodbye?" They all agreed that they had said goodbye, and that they hadn't had any strange experiences. I honestly don't know if I believe them. The following weeks were pretty uneventful, so much so that I started to feel like a nut for going down that rabbit hole. The only thing that hasn't gone back to normal was Kayla. She was no longer wanting to stay the night at my house, so we got into a routine of driving her home late at night, picking her up in the morning. Kayla lives with her parents about 2 miles away from my place. We both live in residential areas that are not heavily occupied. Our neighbors aren't stacked on top of each other. We've got space in between. But Kayla has a lot more space in between. And unlike my street, hers is a long stretch that eventually turns to gravel and has limited streetlights. Our routine is for me to park before the driveway and then walk her to the door. The reason for this is because her parents' bedroom is positioned in a way that any headlights in the driveway would shine directly into their room. So, cut to tonight. I parked my car under one of the few streetlights, and we got out to walk towards her house. A few steps away from the car, we're basically walking in darkness. This part hasn't ever scared us before, but tonight, we seemed to walk closer to one another, and we both seemed to pick up the pace at the same time. Walking through the darkness, maybe 30 feet from her driveway, we freeze. We'd heard that same manufactured laugh that we'd heard outside my house 3 weeks ago. The high-pitched voice seemed to scream over the lower, unnatural voice, but like the first time, in unison. I felt both of our bodies tense. The grip on each other's hands intensified. Without words, we both just booked it back to my car. I practically threw Kayla in the car and scrambled to the driver's side. After sitting in the car for what I consider to be too long, Kayla says that she thinks she wants me to drop her off in the driveway, explaining she doesn't mind if her parents wake up tonight. Once in the driveway, neither of us wants to budge, so I bite the bullet and I get out of the car. I get her out of the car and we practically run to her front door. I didn't want to admit it and still don't, but I was fucking scared. I told her that I would be fine though, and I would call her in the morning. I'm not even home yet, just sitting in my car at a brightly lit Shell station. No idea what I'm waiting for, and I know I'm not going to get any responses before I inevitably have to go home, but it sure would be nice to wake up to some answers. Is there any possible way that we're actually dealing with a demon? If that's even possible, what the hell do we do? There's a chance nothing else happens, but am I kind of screwed, seeing as this took place in my house? Like, is it possible for something to attach itself to either one of us, even though we didn't touch the board? I guess the big question is, do I need to move?